Hi, this is Jen Rubin of Jen Rubin's Green Room. Welcome to the first and hopefully one of many to follow Friday Jen Rubin Weekly Roundup. And we're going to look back at the week. Sometimes it'll be a horror show, sometimes it'll be good news, and talk a little bit about the week gone by. And I must say, it's sort of hard to do this because by the time you drag yourself to Friday, it's sometimes hard to remember what happened on Monday. But we will give it a shot. We will see how much we can cover in the time we have together. Let me start with something that happened just on Thursday, and that was Biden's speech in Arizona. He went to the opening of the John McCain Library. John McCain, in Donald Trump's words, was a loser because he was shot down and he was a prisoner of war. But he, of course, was not a loser. He was a great American hero. And this speech by Biden was actually one of the best he's given of his entire presidency. It was well delivered, modulated, no fumfering around for words, and the text of it was really quite beautiful and quite moving. And although the press likes to characterize these things as a tit for tat, the sharpest attack on Trump ever, that's really not what it was about. It was a call to arms in defense of democracy. Donald Trump is the tip of the spear on this neo-fascist movement we call the MAGA movement, but it's not just him. And Biden made clear that you can't have a democracy in which only one side decides they're never going to recognize the other side if they win. We can't have a society in which the former chief of staff threatens to kill, or at least promises to kill, the former Joint Chiefs Chairman. You can't have a functioning democracy in which one side goes from one loony conspiracy to another, rather than doing its job, tries to impeach the current president simply because the last one was impeached. And although he mentioned Trump, that really was not the Gravman. That was not what he was after. And I hope it is a reminder to our friends in the media. I am the media, of course, but I still reserve the right to criticize. I hope it's a reminder to them of what is important. They have never taken this issue seriously. They give a lot of lip service. Democracy dies in darkness. Democracy people who are assigned various beats. But when Biden talks about it, he tends to get ridiculed or he gets ignored. If you remember last year, he gave a great speech in Philadelphia warning about the MAGA movement. And what did the press do? They criticized the lighting. They didn't like the fact that there was a Marine in back of him. It was all petty stuff. But in fact, he was exactly right. He did catch the mood of the country. And in fact, many of the election deniers, the crazies, were thrown out. And people did, I think, resonate to the message that you have to have people who are pro-democracy. You have to have small d Democrats. So I really do hope this speech gets a little bit more attention than it has already, and that he comes back to it. Repetition is the lifeblood of politics. So I think he's going to have to give something like this over and over again. But I would encourage him to do so, and would encourage you to go listen to the speech or read the speech. Another event that happened just today, the senior senator from California, Diane Feinstein, passed away at the age of 90. Now, she had been sick for some time, and you will remember there were screams and howls for her to resign, to retire early. Those very same voices are now shedding crocodile tears, talking about what an icon she was and an inspiration. But hypocrisy is nothing new in politics. I will say this, however. We have a very, very old Senate. I think the average age is nearly 65, and that includes some very young senators who are still in their high 30s or low 40s. And this was not what the founders had in mind, I will tell you. At the time that they set the age for senators at 30, the average lifespan wasn't much beyond that. So yes, they were having senior citizens, but with the expectation that this would be maybe a 10-year run, maybe a 12-year run in the Senate. I don't think they ever conceived that we would have people like Chuck Grassley, who has been there for forever. And again, although the press would like to make out Biden to be some kind of enfeebled character, take a look at the Senate and listen to these people. It is somewhat horrifying. So, short of a constitutional amendment, there's nothing we're really going to do about it. But I would say this: Democrats have to get tough on the rules which they control. Last time, Republicans did not want to replace her if she stepped down from the Senate Judiciary Committee. Who cares what they want? They're the minority. The Senate Democrats have to get together, make sure, first of all, she's replaced promptly, and secondly, that they have a full representation on the Senate Judiciary Committee. And while they are at it, we have another senator who should not be in the Senate, and that is Senator Menendez. He of gold bars and envelope stuffed with cash in his closet. I think there was a movie about this. But thankfully, Republicans are not just like Democrats. And there was a whole lineup of them, I think they got to about 30, calling for his resignation. Now, suddenly, the Republicans are crying, due process, don't kick him out, leave him there. Well, of course, due process doesn't apply to people like Hunter Biden, who they've already convicted of God knows what. But more to the point, why do they want someone who is obviously so disreputable in the Senate? We're not talking about guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That's not the standard for the Senate. The standard for the Senate is that you don't dishonor the body. And if there's anyone who's dishonored it, it's this guy. But the Republicans love to have these people around because then they can say, oh, all politicians are the same. We have Donald Trump, you have Robert Menendez. But of course, it's not the same because unlike the Republicans, who will never say a ill will or ill word about Donald Trump, Democrats in unison, from the governor of the state to the second in control in the Senate, Dick Durbin, came out and said he should go. He can't really uphold his obligations and his duties while he's defending this. So in case you needed any evidence that these two things, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, are not the same, here you go. We, of course, also, as we sit here on Friday, are looking forward to the Kevin McCarthy shutdown. Now, the press would have you believe, oh, it's just a handful of these troublemaking Republicans, the real crazies. That actually isn't right. Kevin McCarthy made a deal with the White House this past summer to get us past the debt ceiling, and that included funding for the government. The Senate has complied with that. They're ready to pass that in the form of a continuing resolution. But Kevin McCarthy does not have the nerve, does not have the spine to stand up to his own people. He could put that deal on the House floor today, any moment now, and it would pass because a majority, not all, but a majority of the Republicans in the House passed it last time for the debt ceiling, and he would have the overwhelming number of Democrats. But why doesn't he do that? Because he's scared of his own shadow. He's scared that he might lose this perch that he has gravitated to his whole life, that he's pined for. What's the worst could happen? They could vote him out. Who cares? Well, Kevin McCarthy cares. This is his whole life. But more importantly, do we really think they would vote him out? Who would take this job? Who do they have on standby? So all of this, shrieing about the radical Republicans, it has always been the case that the real problem is Kevin McCarthy and the moderate Republicans who refuse to do their job, who refuse to reach across the aisle and govern, because they, just like those presidential candidates who got on the stage this past week in the Republican debate, are afraid of their own shadows. They've created a base that is monstrous, that is irrational, that is crazy, that is juiced up on Fox News, and they're scared. They're scared of losing their seats, which for them is their entire life. They cannot imagine not being important. They cannot imagine not getting on Fox News. This is the best job most of them can ever hope to hold. Would you hire these people to do anything of any importance? Of course not. And imagine doing a job this badly. You can't even keep the lights on, and you want to get paid and you want to get reinstated every 2 years to your job. That's how screwy things have become. Now, we should really talk about the impeachment. It's not really an impeachment. It's an inquiry for an impeachment. What is that? That's nothing. It's just another hearing. But they had to call it something else because, once again, Kevin McCarthy is feeding the beast. He is getting the right-wing Republicans to say, oh, look, this is an impeachment inquiry. There's no vote on impeachment. And the hearing that they had was drop dead hilarious. Not in the way they intended, but it was a shit show, pardon my language. The House Democrats looked like they were having more fun than anything that they could possibly dream up. They were mocking, they were explaining how Republicans themselves recognized there was no evidence. They got Jonathan Turley, the hack lawyer for Republicans, to acknowledge there's insufficient grounds for an impeachment. They went to town on this. And it was so bad that Steve Bannon was criticizing the Republicans. Now, that's bad if you can't keep Steve Bannon on your side. And it was so bad that right-wing Republicans are saying, we were set up by Kevin McCarthy. My God, these people are insane. They begged with Kevin McCarthy to have an impeachment. Now that they've got it and they've made fools out of themselves, whose fault is it? Kevin McCarthy. So this would be funny if it weren't so tragic, if it wasn't such an abuse of government, if it wasn't, of course, more evidence that these people do not know how to govern. All they know how to do is create fodder for Fox News and right-wing media. And although it was amusing, I must say the Democrats on that committee are worth their weight in gold. You have people like Dan Goldman, people like Jamie Raskin, Jared Moskowitz, who are witty, who are prepared, who are absolutely exquisitely equipped to skewer the Republicans. They should be doing governance. They shouldn't be having to play defense against the loonies on the other side. So although I did derive some satisfaction from watching this clown show, I would much rather watch them actually passing legislation, keeping the government open. Finally, the Republican debate. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I could not bring myself to watch it. I figured, life is short. Will I ever get those 2 hours back in my life? Nah, I'll never get it back. Besides, all the good parts I'll get to see on the news. And from what everyone said, including the other Republicans, this was another disaster. None of these people are willing to take on Donald Trump. None of these people have the gravitas to make the case Trump is unfit. They bicker among themselves. They engage in nonsensical arguments about silly items. They don't get to the heart of the matter, which is a neo-fascist is leading in their primary. And unless all of them get together or they find somebody else, they're going to have to stand behind this guy. And so I must say my 2 hours was well spent. I watched a really bad movie on Netflix and read a book. So that was time better spent. But more to the point, these debates are meaningless. They are absolutely meaningless because they do not have someone who is ready and willing to take on Donald Trump. And in fact, they're so desperate now. Robert Costa, who used to be with the Washington Post, now with CBS News, reports that they are in a frenzy to draft Glenn Youngkin. As if Glenn Youngkin is going to be any more courageous, any more viable against Donald Trump than the rest of the people who are up there. I don't know. And people say, well, what's the solution? You know what? I don't know. I didn't make this mess. I didn't refuse to dump Trump when they had a chance to impeach him. I wasn't the one who refused to kick him off the stage when he wouldn't take a pledge and agree to support the other candidates and participate in a primary in which he may well, at the end, instruct his followers not to vote if he doesn't win. I wasn't the one who continues to make excuses and attack the FBI and every judge and every part of our judicial system that is seeking to prosecute him for crimes, either during or after his presidency. It's not our problem to solve. So yeah, they have a problem. And as a result, America has a problem. But the only way of getting rid of Donald Trump is for Republicans to do it. If not, well, I guess we'll just have to do it next November. And that's when all people of goodwill, Republicans, Democrats, independents, are going to have to make sure that, as President Biden said, that we don't let democracy die. If you like this, I hope you will join us every Friday. We'll be doing a week in review. And if you like me and you like the guests that we've been having, please join us for Jen Rubin's Green Room. We drop a new program every Wednesday. Tell your friends they can listen and follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever they get their podcasts. Have a good weekend.